Welcome to Behind the Knowledge, a best hour podcast where we dive deep into the lives and stories of inspiring coaches from all walks of life. The two hosts of this show are me, Pat Barber, and my good friend and fellow coach, Todd Acuto. Each week, we'll sit down with the most amazing coaches we can find, uncovering their unique paths, the challenges they've faced, and passions that continue to drive them. Whether you're a seasoned coach, an aspiring one, or simply somebody who likes listening to stories of how people achieve the success that they have, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the powerful stories and insights from the world of coaching. This is Behind the Knowledge. Let's jump in. All right, we're back. We're back with another episode of Behind the Knowledge. This time, we're hanging with Luke. And Luke actually got put in touch with us by Christian, our awesome media guy, head of getting Star Wars stuff thrown in there on meme. He works with us at Best Hour, and he's like, dude, I've got a great friend who's an amazing coach who's made a living out of coaching, who's coaching at a bigger box, and his story is pretty cool. So that's how you got put in touch with us. So why don't you tell me where you're from, how long you've been coaching, and then we'll get into some of the stories.
Cool. Yeah. I'm from Massachusetts. It's where I grew up. I actually got into CrossFit, though, when I was down in Louisville, Kentucky. I lived there for about a decade. And actually, weirdly enough, the seminary that I was attending had a group of guys that had been doing CrossFit. A couple of them had their L1s, and they actually opened up on the campus of the seminary. So that was that was my introduction to CrossFit. I was starting to work out with those guys. That was back in like 2015 or so. And then I went and got my L1 in 17 with the idea of maybe helping them out with coaching at the box on campus. But that didn't end up working out. So I ended up getting an internship as a CrossFit kids coach at just a local gym in Louisville. And worked there for about a year or so. And then this was kind of awesome. But the beginning of my CrossFit journey is a little tumultuous. About a year into my first job, which was going great, the gym owner decided to sell the gym and had the best of intentions for everybody who he left behind. But I ended up losing my job like the next day.
Oh, no.
That was brutal.
Wait, why? What happened? What happened there? How did you? So you were coaching, and then did you just like cuss out the new owner? You're like, hey, you're a giant bag of turds.
No, she was a member of the gym before she took ownership of the gym, and we never really got along super duper well, where she was a member and I was the coach. And then on top of that, it made some level of sense because I was the only full-time coach, and I was the biggest line on the budget. So yeah, I ended up losing my position.
What did you learn from that, if you don't mind me asking? Like, to put it bluntly, like that's a pretty confronting experience.
That was
slap in the face, but hey, job's gone after something you care about, and you're unpacking it there of like you didn't get along with her while she was a member, but what did you take away from that you've taken into your career moving forward?
Honestly, because of what comes next and comes down the line as well, it was just not to hold on to anything too tightly. I learned that in this industry, jobs can come and go.
Yeah. Well, I think it's any industry, jobs can come and go.
Yeah, it seems to kick me in the pants a little bit more often in CrossFit, though.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because the next job I had, I actually got a job shortly thereafter in what would have been May of 2019. Working for another smaller gym in Louisville. And we were in the process of starting to rebuild and come out of kind of a downtime for the gym. The owner had been split between a couple of different enterprises, and the gym was starting to get kind of put on the back burner. And I was brought in to kind of revitalize it and get it going. And we got some good momentum going into the fall of 2019. And then March of 2020 came along. Yeah, COVID came in and crushed the gym a little bit. And we actually never opened up coming out of COVID.
Whoa. No. Okay. So
Yeah.
how did you find that job though? So like my curiosity, so you get fired from this other job and you're
Yep.
going to find this other new gym. Like what does the process look like for an existing coach trying to find a new coaching job? Like what did you do to do that?
Yeah. So actually, I was put in touch with the second gym from the previous owner of the first gym, the guy that I was getting along with great and a wonderful experience with. Um, he kind of felt bad with how the way things ended up turning out. So he connected me with this new guy. And then I think there was maybe 2 phone calls, and then I was hired on as his full-time coach and operations director.
Hell yeah. And did
Oh,
you
you were full-time there as well?
Yes. Yeah. So since April of 2018, my full-time job has been CrossFit coaching.
Oh
And
yeah.
tell me about that transition, because you mentioned you started coaching as an intern for a kids class. So how does that turn into a full-time CrossFit coach and an affiliate and, working with adults and the rest of that? I know there's a lot of part-time coaches out there that are interested in becoming full-time, and it sounds like that transition for you was kind of seamless, or it seemed a little bit easier than maybe others. So how were you able to take that internship and turn it into a full-time job in the first place?
It turned out pretty seamless, but it was a result of a lot of persistence. I was working the job that was actually paying the bills at the time. I was working as a sterile processor in a hospital, so I sterilized surgical instruments,
Ooh.
which is not the most fun job on the planet.
Right.
Spent a lot of time knee deep in other people's body fluids, so that wasn't great. So I was looking to get out of that about as soon as possible. And I took the job as the kids CrossFit intern, and over it was only just a couple of months. Just kept persisting with the gym owner, asking him if there was more I could do, asking if there was openings in the schedule that I could hop into, and over a couple of months or so, I ended up talking him into taking me on and being like the secondary coach on the floor for every single class, for virtually peanuts. So I
Oh, wow.
did what I had to do to get into that position. So
Yeah.
So two things with that. You were on the floor for every single class
yeah,
that was happening?
from the
Okay.
6:30 a.m. to the 6:30 p.m. Yep.
Whoa.
The other thing I'm curious about is you said you started asking the owner for additional things to do besides coaching. What did some of those additional things look like that you were able to take on and kind of add value and show your worth?
I became the cleaner for the gym. So every Thursday, pretty early on, this gym was the classic CrossFit, 3 days on, 1 day off. So we actually didn't even have classes on Thursday. It was just an open gym day. So I would come in and clean the whole gym on Thursday. So that's one of the things I made happen. I kept the bathrooms relatively clean. I wasn't like cleaning that all the time, but that was also within my purview. So janitor and coaching all the classes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty not an uncommon way to get the foot in the door, because it's one of those jobs that's actually, it's not too difficult to do, and you can really take a lot of burden off of an owner's shoulders. I know for me, whenever people wanted to come in and they would offer something like that and they wanted to start coaching or interning, it was kind of a no-brainer to get them. And it's like also psychologically, it gets you in the mode of like taking care of the gym. And I think that is a foundational component of being a coach. Like sometimes you hire people straight in and then they're kind of slobs. And you're like, how did you not replace the toilet paper when you walked in the bathroom? And it was like gone, and you have to teach these things to adults, which is a pain in the ass. So I appreciate that perspective, the direction you took, and I'm glad to see it panned out and worked for you.
And a gym owner too, that tells you a lot about how reliable the person is.
Your eye froze up, or you
I
guys
can't tell.
that? Oh, boy.
Not sure. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Yep, I think we're back.
Okay. I was going to
What
say,
were you
as a gym owner, that shows me a lot of how reliable somebody is, because I can't tell you how many people I've had that have asked to like trade cleaning responsibilities for membership or things like that. And you're like, all right, cool. Let's see if you can do this once a week. And, they make it the first week, and the second week something comes up, or they don't show up, or they don't do it all the way. And it's like, all right, cool. This clearly isn't going to work. So, yeah, to Pat's point, you pick up a lot of burden and then you prove your worth, which is great.
Yep.
So you get through and you get to COVID. You're a full-time coach again. COVID hits. The gym never makes it out of that. What happens after that?
We did not make it through. So again, just through another connection, a guy that would come in and work out at this other gym, maybe like once or twice a month. And then like after class, we would just hang out and chat. Turns out he owned his own gym and he was coming to us for CrossFit classes because he was getting into the whole CrossFit thing and he was getting his L1 so that he could affiliate. So shortly after the gym closed down for COVID, he was actually looking for a head CrossFit coach to kind of start bringing CrossFit into his gym. So I already had a relationship with him. So when I reached out, it was pretty much a layup for him to reach out and hire me for that.
That's awesome. And so same deal. So you roll into another full-time time role. And with this guy just getting started, like having a gym that's obviously not an affiliate and just getting started in that world, was your main role once again just coaching classes, or did you take on additional responsibilities there as well?
Coaching classes. I did some gym cleaning still. That was a regular constant for me the whole time through with my first 3 jobs was cleaning the gym. And I also took over a lot of client management stuff with him as well. So I ran a lot of the back end stuff. He had 2 different locations and he had like a series of different CRMs. So I was running Watify, we were running MindBody, and then he had a whole bunch of other things that we were working through.
So with that though, you were starting a CrossFit gym for him. He didn't have one previously. Is that right?
I think he had affiliated like maybe a couple of months before I got there.
But you essentially came on board. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was running like a boot camp kind of thing before that.
Gotcha. So I'm assuming the culture would be slightly different than like what you would teach and what you would want to versus what it was. So was there like an intentional building of that culture when you went into the new space? Like, did you have to orchestrate that, or was that just it?
There was an attempt at creating that culture that didn't ultimately end up working out.
Yeah, tell me how that went. What did you try, or what did you walk into, and what went wrong?
Yeah, so I was coming in. We were trying to just bring about just regular CrossFit culture. One of his locations took to it really, really well. There were some people that were really excited about being in CrossFit and getting after it and working at some high intensity. And then one of his other locations was a little bit more used to the boot camp, keeping things lighter, not really caring if squat was below parallel. So there was some butting heads at that location for me.
Got it. And then, so when you're faced with those kinds of things, like you're going into a pre-existing culture, these people have already been training, you're trying to do the new stuff. What did you just like, when you butted heads, was it like, you know what, this is your space, you've been here longer, or like, were you just kind of picking your battles and choosing them? Like, how did that go?
It was a little bit of picking the battles. Looking back on it, there was a little bit more of me not shutting up when I should have. I probably fought battles a little bit more than I should have. I got a little bit more intense when I probably shouldn't have. I wasn't really taking like a long-term approach to it. I was like, let's do this now. Let's get this going. Let's do this right here. And going back, I probably in that scenario would have done things a little bit more, easing people into it than I ultimately ended up doing.
Dude, I feel you on that. I've done that.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this a lot. So is that what all of that sounds like? It was around like movement standards and essentially like you trying to communicate what the methodology is supposed to be from your belief. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was. Yep, a lot of that. A lot of like trying to get people to see the importance of like lifting heavy weights and pushing yourself to that level of intensity that a lot of people don't want to, and having standards for something like even just an air squat. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember those days too, where it's like, no, this is how it's done and it doesn't matter. And, it comes at the expense of your ability to create relationships with people and gain buy-in and stuff like that. And it's like, no, this is how you do it. And you either do it or GTFO or whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've discussed that quite a bit on previous episodes of this.
We have indeed. And I think one of the things is, I'm sure you figured out, it's like, as you grow, it's like, okay, how can I still get exactly what I want, but in a way that they can hear it, right? How can I still maintain truth to these standards, these methodologies, but say it in a way that they can eventually hear it? So that's rad.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that just be a little bit more comfortable with taking a longer road, but
to get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so you're running these 2 gyms, you're trying to set the culture, things are going there. Now what happens?
So during that time, actually, while I was working at that gym is when I hopped into the old coaches development group with Berman and where I met Christian and a bunch of the other OGs of the best hour of their day groups. And it was actually on a call with must have been Denise. And I don't even know if she spoke to this specifically, but during the call, I came to the conclusion that like where I was at wasn't really working. It wasn't going to be growing me further as a coach. I was already the best coach in that gym by a significant margin, and I wasn't that good yet. And there just wasn't going to be much growth for me there. That if I wanted to get serious about being a CrossFit coach and really getting into this thing, you guys still there? Did I lose you?
Yep. Nope.
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay. If I really wanted to take this thing seriously, then I was probably going to have to look outside of Louisville, Kentucky for the kind of gyms where I could still grow into this thing a little bit more. And actually Todd, gone.
I was just going to say, like, it sounded like obviously that discussion or that comment from DT was a big piece, but what convinced you to join the mastermind group in the first place? Like, obviously you clearly wanted to be better and wanted to be more as far as a coach was concerned anyways.
Repeat your question, Todd. I actually locked you there for a second. I'm sorry.
Just like you made mention of whatever it was that DT had said on that call that kind of let the light bulb go off that in order to become a better coach, you're probably going to have to move on from the gyms that you were at. But I was curious, obviously you're already seeking to become a better coach, and that's why you got involved with the mastermind in the first place. So like what was that push? Like I see a lot of coaches that's like, hey, I'm the best coach at the gym.
There had been things going on with the gym I was working in, where it was realizing that I was putting in a lot of work and not really getting the direction that I needed it to go into. I was getting nowhere. And I was starting already to kind of look for different CrossFit gyms to work for. Yeah. And again, some of that was my fault. Some of that was I was a bull in China shop. Some of it was that the culture of the gym just wasn't really, I don't think, ever going to turn in the direction of CrossFit.
Got it.
And
to that,
you said that, and I was correct because he actually de-affiliated about a year after I left.
Wow.
But you were right. You were right to know that
it does turn that way. Yeah.
Are you a CrossFit coach who's feeling stuck in their development? You're not alone. Many coaches lack good guidance when it comes to how to develop as a coach. They either don't have strong examples they find themselves around, they may lack support from their gym owner, and they just feel unprepared going into their next credential. That's why we made the Knowledge Pro, to fill that gap. It's a mentorship program built for coaches like you. It uses the Knowledge Daily, our comprehensive video library, as well as extra content that we put directly into the Knowledge Pro on our live weekly calls twice a week to mentor you and get you to the next level of development. We've got progressions, we've got scales, we've got one-off tips and tricks, we've got full coached classes by level 4 coaches so you can see an example of what it means to do this job well. All of that will also be walked through each week on those live calls, so that you have a soundboard to bounce off of and a group of coaches looking to be better to help support you in your endeavors. Coaching isn't just knowing what to do. It's also knowing how to do it. And that takes 2 things. 1, an example, and 2, practice. Practice is on your end. You got to go out there and do it. We can help provide that example and the support with the Knowledge Pro. If you want to know more, click the link below and give the Knowledge Pro a shot. I look forward to seeing you on one of the next calls.
So you said that you were kind of able to recognize that you were the best gym in that space, or best coach in that space. What did that mean to you? Like for you when you were thinking like, hey, I'm looking around at these other coaches. They're not at the level that I'm at, and I still have a lot of room to grow? Because it sounds like you recognize that you could be better. But what did that
100%.
mean to you to be the best of the space?
I actually didn't like it. um, I like having people to aspire to. It's like being the best athlete in the room. Like if you're the best athlete in the room, find a different room.
Yeah.
Find people that are better than you that can help you grow.
What were the things that
And
made you more capable than others? Like what were you able to do that others couldn't? Or when you looked around, like what were the tangible things?
I could see and correct, and I actually and I actually did that in classes. Yeah, no, I would watch some of the other coaches in this organization coach, and they were literally just like, "This is the workout, go." Like here's a quick warm up. We're doing kettlebell swings and dumbbell snatches. Here, yeah, go team.
Wow.
So there wasn't much. It didn't say a lot that I was the best CrossFit coach in that organization, just because there wasn't that much coaching going on.
If I had you to think back to your growth as a coach, what was the first time you saw somebody coach that you were like, whoa, that's coaching? And like, who was that person? What was that instance?
So I had 2 guys at the first gym that I worked at, 3 guys really, but 2 that I worked with a fair amount as the secondary coach. And one of the best parts about being the secondary coach is I got to see a very experienced coach running the class. And then I was just kind of in the background helping out the newer people, making sure they could keep up and not get lost. And I saw there were 2 guys specifically in that gym that were really good at leading a group and like breaking down progressions, and then seeing and correcting through the whole Metcon. Like there were some really solid coaches that I learned under in that first job that I had.
That's awesome. What a good example. That set you up for the success for the rest of the way.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Cool. So then you decide to leave that. Where you go?
I did. I actually filled out applications all over the country. I think Meade was trying to hire somebody at the time. They ended up hiring their current head coach. I think I applied to a spot at Reebok, which conveniently I didn't get because that's not a gym anymore.
Right.
I was in talks with a guy down at he was either on St. Thomas or St. Bart's. And we actually had 2 or 3 over the phone interviews. And then he was like, you have kids, you probably shouldn't come here. There's not even a hospital on this island. It's homeless. So he actually ended up talking me out of it. And then I actually filled out an application for Invictus Boston and kind of giggled to myself because they have the reputation that they have. I was like, surely they're not looking for me. Their whole coaching staff at the time was professional athletes. It was Tola Morikino and Kelsey Keel and Steph Chong who were coaching there. So giggled to myself a little bit when I hit send on that application. And they ended up calling me back. And I drove from Louisville all the way up to Boston. My son and I hopped in my Mini Cooper at the time and drove all the way up to Boston. I did my interview. I did my demo class for them and ended up walking away with the job and moved from Louisville back up to Massachusetts 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And started working at Invictus Boston.
What at the time were you level 3? Were you a level 2? Where were you as far as credentials?
I was a level 2 at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
I got my level 2, I think, in that 3rd job after I had started working with the best hour guys.
Yeah. What do you think it was about your resume? Like you made mention a giggling when you sent that off because you didn't seem to fit the mold of all of their other full-time coaches. What do you think it was about your resume? Did they ever tell you? Like, what do you think it was? They gave you the opportunity.
On paper, I looked like a pretty good candidate. I had the title operational director twice on my resume. It had said full-time coach for 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a bunch of experience. I had a bunch of hours behind me. I had fancy titles, even though the gyms were tiny, and that didn't mean that much. Mostly meant that I scrubbed the floors, but
being a full-time coach, like I said, is like to figure out how to make that work early on in your coaching journey is huge. So that's awesome that it obviously paid off, not only to give you a full-time job, but to get you set up in Boston and at Invictus. So what was it? Go ahead, Pat.
Also say that you probably, I mean, there must have been something in the interview as well as the fact that you drove 14 hours to be there, because it's like when you're a gym like Invictus Boston that has a name and there's a bunch of people who are associated with it, and like anybody who wants to be a coach tends to apply to those spaces just because they have the most name recognition. When I was running NorCal, I was in charge of all the hiring, and we would get like 5 applications a week, of people being like, hey, I want to come coach, even when we weren't hiring. So, and you'd vet all of them. And a lot of people would have these like impressive resumes, but it was like, you'd sit and you'd interview them and you'd be like, nah. Like, you're like, no, like, I don't care how many certifications you've taken. Like, if you are going to be able to fit in and do well here, you need to have something more. So like, I like how you downplay it and you say like, oh, I had these things on my resume. It's like, it would have been that coupled with whatever interview you did and the commitment to drive 14 hours from, Louisville to Boston, and just like give it a shot and say, yeah, dude, I'm ready to do this. So don't downplay yourself, man. I think you got more than you're saying.
I appreciate that.
What were you gonna say?
What was it like when you got there? So obviously this is now a bigger gym. There's probably some more experienced coaches. So what was it like when you first get there and start coaching?
It was very eye-opening. I mean, it's still coaching CrossFit, so it's not terribly different. But yeah, within the first couple of classes I coached, I had like a former team games athlete up into a class. I met some of the games athletes that were on staff. Tried not to fangirl too hard on that. But I mean, for the most part, when I got there, it was just more coaching CrossFit. Like, our members are just regular people, just trying to come in and get fit.
What was the quality of the other coaches like? Did you step in and automatically be like, have examples like you mentioned at your very first gym where you're like, oh man, these guys are doing the thing and these are people to look up to? Or okay, so tell me more about that.
Yeah, no, I came onto the staff, and there's a few guys who have been in the organization since it opened over a decade ago, who have just thousands and thousands of hours of coaching experience. So there were a handful of guys that I could really look up to, who I learned a ton from, and I'm still learning from a couple of them at this point because they're still with us. So
nice.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what? Like, I've never fangirled over an athlete because I was always from that perspective.
You were that athlete?
I was the athlete. So when it was never a difference for me for like coaching good athletes, like it was always just like, you're another person in my class. I'm going to treat you like this. So what is the psychology like of like stepping into a space where you do have like relatively famous people and a culture centered around stuff? And like, what did you do? Did you do anything different, or how did you handle that? What was that process like?
I sat back and asked questions initially. I did a lot of that. If I saw anything that just my coaches I picked up as weird, I would ask a question instead of immediately starting to cue them. And it actually took until there was a moment where I was working with not one of the games athletes, but there was a higher level athlete, an African kid, a South African guy, who would make it to the semifinals pretty regularly. And I helped him with something on his clean. There was like, he didn't quite fully hit extension. And then on his yard, he let the barbell bounce just a little bit. And I brought that up, and he was like, oh yeah, thanks. I was like, oh, look, he's just a normal athlete too. That's something. So awesome. I just needed that moment where like I actually helped one of these higher level athletes. And at that point, I pretty much got over it. And now I coach them like I coach anybody else.
Well, and I think that's a cool point too, is like you made mention of in your early days in some of your first gyms that you went in, especially the 2 gyms that you were going after, where instead of asking questions and pulling somebody in by getting to know them and figuring out why they're doing what they're doing, you just went in there and told them what to do. Where in this environment, you flipped that and started to get to know them, probably gain a little bit of buy-in, and that made them more open to listening to you and receiving your feedback and cues. Would that
100%.
be something that you've taken beyond the like high level athletes? Do you feel like that's something you were able to do when you got there?
Yeah, I generally do that with everybody now. Yeah, I start by asking questions instead of telling people what to do now. And I watch more than I talk. And I've also gotten over the idea that like I don't need to prove that I'm smarter than them.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of situations I'm not. I work with a lot of very like high achieving people now that are years and years, like just well beyond me intelligence wise. Like I work with professors at Harvard now. I'm not going to even pretend I'm smart.
What do you think? Where did that transition happen? Like what gave you the confidence to be okay to not have to prove yourself to people?
It came just kind of over time working with this clientele in Boston. Yeah, working with athletes that were way better than me, working with athletes who have been at this way longer than me. And then, just working with people that are just genuinely smarter than I am.
Yeah. It's an interesting tightrope to walk, because you have to have the fundamental confidence to be like, I have a base level of like, I know some big picture things. Go below parallel, push the knee out, keep the chest up, back stays flat, and then I know a couple ways of getting people there, but but then you can't be so like, I think it's when we start to like buckle down on the nuance, oh, you need to always have your shoulder exactly like this in an overhead position. Otherwise you're a bag of crap. And you're like, okay, well, let's examine this a little closer. Like when you start to form too strong of an opinion about nuance, I think that's where we go awry. But it sounds like you got your core belief structure around what you like. And then you're willing to like explore a bit. And I think that tool alone of just like, when you feel out of your league a little bit, just ask some questions, and then you just get so much more context. Like that's a huge tool that any coach could use. Like, whoa.
It was super helpful for getting into this context. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I had thousands of hours of coaching already. By the time I hit the floor at Boston, I'd already coached 4,000 CrossFit classes. So I mean, I had some level of earned experience and earned confidence. But showing up in that scenario where I was very much the small fish in a really big pond, that forced me to kind of step back a little bit and ask questions before hopping in.
Yeah. I mean, that tool, I think, too, can be used to guide people your own direction too. Like even if you have an opinion, you can still go like, well, why do you do that way with the feet? And then they're like, oh, more power into the ground. You're like, oh, well, have you seen, like, if you narrow your feet a little bit, it's going to maybe have more power, but the wider will allow you to dip a little deeper, and maybe there'll be a transition. Let's try it there. So like you can use it to gain
the phrase, have you tried this? I use that a lot. Have you tried this?
Yeah. Have you done this one? Like, let's see this.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I think that being able to genuinely ask questions and be interested in the answers is like one of the biggest skills that we can have as a coach. Like, have you ever bumped into somebody who asks fake questions just so they can?
Yes. Yes, I have. Actually, in my time in seminary, there were a number of students who would ask questions just to show off their knowledge.
Yeah.
That weren't actual questions. Oh yeah. And I've been around that a lot in my life.
You're like, what the hell? Like, you asked me a question just so you had an opportunity to speak. It feels so slimy when you recognize it. So I love
makes your skin crawl.
I love that you figured out how to genuinely ask questions in those scenarios, and now I bet you use that so well. That's great. So where are you now? Like, in terms of, so you've been there for how long, and what's your role, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I've been at Invictus Boston since May of 2021 is when I started. I took a 6-month hiatus to try a different gym last October, but it only lasted 6 months. The owner and I didn't get along super well. So conveniently, when that started falling apart, I reached back out to my buddies in Boston, and they pulled me right back in. So now I'm coaching. I coach 14 hours in Invictus Boston in the Back Bay area, and then I run the membership accounts. So I run the back end there. I'm the membership coordinator. Is my official title. And then I serve on the leadership team as well.
Nice. So almost like all that stuff where you were doing extracurricular pieces, helping other people manage stuff through the years, played itself into the role that can help you balance out coaching hours and external work. Look at that.
100%. Yeah,
It's
worked out pretty well in that one. Yeah, you don't have to clean anymore though. We actually hire professional cleaners at Invictus. So.
Well, I'm sure you still pick up after people when you walk into bathrooms and they're dirty. I'm sure it
I did in fact mop this morning a little bit. Yeah, you bet I did.
Do you have any, if you were to look forward, do you have any like long-term goals for yourself as a coach? Like if you're going to go from here where you are now to moving forward, what's your, or are you just stoked? You're done.
No, I don't think I'm done yet. I still got some areas to grow in. I'm going to make a push for my L4 at some point. Life is currently just a little too busy. I'm still trying to figure out this new-ish role. So I don't really have a ton of time to put into it currently, but that's on the horizon, is pushing towards the L4. And then we'll kind of see where it goes from there. My gym has a history of expanding and buying up other locations. A couple of years ago, we bought CrossFit One Nation. So there's always kind of a possibility that the ownership will reach out and then buy another gym. And I've talked to them a little bit about possibly running a gym that they buy in the future. So that's kind of a goal that if it does work out, that's great. If I just continue to grow in this organization, I'm perfectly happy with it too. I think I've decided pretty well though that I've found my tribe at Invictus Boston. I've tried. I made an effort to try to go out and run somebody else's gym, and just didn't really work. So I've found my people here. I love the people I work with. We've got a great team that I vibe with really well. So I have no real plans of leaving this organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's either you go somewhere and you have full control and power to do what you need to do to build your tribe, or you work with people who have the same belief structure that you do. And I think that
100%.
that's the main difference is like you can either pull a Todd O and create your space and be like, look, I have the final say in everything. I have all the power, so I can create my tribe. Or you need to work with a group of people that are like, hey, we all believe in the same mission. We all believe in the same goal. We all believe in the same things, maybe different ways of getting there, but we have the same end goal. And it's just impossible to work from it within an organization where you're butting heads with like
oh my God,
people who have more power or like equal control, even like it's just real hard. I know I've been in that situation and I do not envy that.
Yeah. If you're not the boss, you definitely have to find your people that you get along with. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. My whole career has been that at this point.
Well, I'm glad that you found your space, man.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
If you could go back,
it's worth the amount of driving.
Yeah, if you could go back and talk to the OG you, the youngest version of you, as you were going through this coaching process, is there like some advice you'd give you to like miss a pitfall here or there, or would you say, hey, just live it? Like, what would you give advice?
The easiest piece of advice coming up with the conversation we've had thus far is say mellow out a little bit.
Yeah.
What turning people's hearts and minds takes a little bit longer. Don't try to smack their face into it.
Nice.
That might have helped me out a little bit.
Yeah. It sounds like the process for that would be asking questions and then listening genuinely to the answers and going there.
Yeah, before just telling
asking
people.
Questions. Yep. Yeah, Ackerman, I'm sure he stole this from somebody, but he always says...
Sorry, I just love how that's the prefix before this, because that is 100% him.
100% true. Yeah, he always says they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Hearing him say that, and again, he stole it from somebody else, but that was very foundational to kind of this shift in my own mind and the way that I think through things and the way that I coach people now.
Yeah,
not to give Jay too much credit, but that was a big one.
Just enough. Yeah. And I think that's so big, is like, if we aren't committed to actually serving people and we're just out there trying to tell them what to do and how to do it, it's just not going to work.
No.
You know,
they're not going to like you. They're not going to come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does not matter how great you are at teaching them how to squat. If they can't stand being in your class, they're not going to come back and learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, really, really cool, man.
Theodore Roosevelt is who that's accredited. People don't care how much you know, how much you care.
Nobody knows. Jay's way more famous than him. Nobody's ever heard of that other guy before. So we'll just accredit it to Ackerman.
There you go. Fantastic.
Well, cool, man. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram. I don't have a ton of stuff going on there, but Coach Luke Meade on Instagram. And then if you're in Boston, you can just hop into Invictus Boston in the Back Bay area, and I'll hook you up and get doing it in classes.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I highly recommend going into big gyms like that and then trying out the classes and seeing what they feel like and seeing these systems that are like proven time and time again to do well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys get the opportunity to go visit one of Luke's classes, please do so.
Yeah, there you go.
Hell yeah, man.
Awesome, man.
Also, I coach.
You went on mute for me. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're
What
that
was
one.
that?
You
coach
CrossFit One Nation. Coach. If you're in town on a weekend, come on up to the suburbs.
Hell yeah. All right, man.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry for the internet stuff and the initial confusion, but we did it.
We got it, did. Proud of us.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Behind the Knowledge. Now, if you want help developing your coaching and to learn from us directly, check out The Knowledge Pro. There we host live calls with our coaches every week where we discuss content together and work on skills to improve our on-the-floor coaching ability. To learn more, you can head over to besthouroftheirday.com/theknowledge. And if you found this content helpful, we're going to be releasing new episodes every week, so subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.